like to welcome Adam Boyd with Trinity Training and Development Group to the Business Growth Show. Adam, thanks for being here.
Chris, it's always fun to be with you.
Yes, absolutely. So, we've known each other for over 15 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was a client of yours at the time.
Yep.
And ever since day one, you've been talking about buying a business. Mm-hmm. And you've finally done it.
Yep.
You showed a lot of tenacity, patience, hard work to get here.
Yeah.
And just, it'd be great if you could share kind of your journey.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, you have been an incredible encouragement along the way. There were a lot of people who said, just get a job. People who questioned, why would you go do this? You should just try to do this. And that actually was one of the bigger challenges, was just avoiding what everyone else said and having the conviction to say, nah, this is really what I'm going to do. So when you and I met, I think it was 2010, and we met through Kurt Coburn and
Yes.
EO. It was sort of this longer term plan to go acquire something. And there were a couple of guys that I knew along the way that we actually started down the path of exploring ideas and looking at things to do together. Several failed starts, and it was a little discouraging. And around 2015, I had two kids at the time. A friend of mine was murdering it in the landscaping business, which is actually a tough business to make it in. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I need to get off my ass and do something. I said, I'm not getting any younger. And I started putting the pieces together to look for something. I was going to work 4 days a week and spend 1 day a week looking, which is a really, really tough way to really commit to anything. But I did that. I had some failed starts. I actually had put in front of me an opportunity to buy a company that ended up in a federal lawsuit later, and it involved firearms and everything else, and liked the business, but I thought, probably not going to touch this one, no matter how I feel about the Second Amendment.
Yes.
Eventually I got to a point where I was burning out in what I was doing. I was in the training space, which ironically is where I ended up again, but I was just burning out. And I went to one of my clients that I knew for a while, and I said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Would you invest if I bring the right deal? And he flipped it on me and said, well, we're getting acquired. We'd love for you to come work with us. Mm-hmm. And you probably remember this. And so I eventually kind of waved the white flag and said, all right, I'll go work for this private equity-backed company. And it was more of, I don't think I'm going to find anything long-term. I might as well go learn. And we did that for a couple of years. And we were more lucky than good. There was a lot of good work that had been done prior to my getting there, but we had a little bit of success, sold the business. And then I thought, okay, let's get after it again.
It's time.
And I started looking again. And I actually got really close to buying wait for it, janitorial company. And then COVID hit. And the deal fell apart. I think it was a little providential that it fell apart then, because I don't know if I would have gotten through underwriting with the rush to PPP, everything else. I was going to use SBA all along. And then the owner, I wanted to keep him in, but with the SBA at the time, we couldn't find a way to do it. And they eventually, I think they changed some things. But I was a little discouraged. I got back into consulting and training because I got 4 kids and they can't live on hopes and dreams forever.
Right.
So back kind of picking up work here and there, doing some things. And I started looking again, saying, all right, around 2022, into 2022, I said, I'm going to go look for something. And through 2022, I met with several owners, put together a letter of intent in one company, and then that deal fell apart. I started finding more things about it that weren't the right things, a little unsavory. Mm-hmm. Then got close on 2 others. Both were effectively distressed, but I liked them. And some just deal stoppers came up, right? Whether it was we could not get on the same planet in terms of purchase price, even though they liked me and wanted me to buy it. And I'm saying, hey, you're losing money, but I'll still pay X. And they think it's worth 6 times X, even though they're losing money.
Right.
Or it's distressed. The operators have all left and they don't understand why I'm not willing to pay X. So I got to a point late last year after going through all that, and I thought, man, I guess it's just not going to happen. We've got a sales training business. We'll put our heads down. We'll grow that and figure it out. We'll put back some cash and eventually just restart this again. But I felt Father Time kind of catching up. And I heard this clock in my head. And it's like, how long am I going to wait? And they'll tell you, like, the average age of a founder is 45. But it doesn't always encourage you when you're going through it and you're looking around and you're playing the compare and compete game with everyone else. I probably called you after, some tequila a couple times, and you listened to me and encouraged me to pick myself back up and go. But I kind of said, all right, I don't know if we're going to find it, and I just kind of made peace with it. But along the way, I sort of made peace with, what I really want is I want to be around my kids. I want to build a great company with really good people that I like working with. There's a certain amount of money I'd like to make, but I don't have this need to make $100 million. So I probably lack ambition in some circles. And I thought, I'd like to coach my kids, don't want to travel a ton for work. I'd like to be home, because you'll see people who get into certain games and they're reporting to boards. They're working 80 hours a week. They're on a plane all the time. And it looks sexy, but there's a significant cost to that.
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity cost.
Yeah. I mean, just relationally, right? My kids are only in the home so long. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, okay. Long story short, I had talked to a ton of brokers. I talked to a lot of bankers. Some guys reach out to me end of October, say, hey, we looked at your background. We think there's a deal we might have. Would you be interested in looking at the teaser? I take a look at the teaser. It's in the training space, which I know, and I've got about 18 years experience in. I look at a brief overview of the financials, the asking price, and how the owner is spending his time now. He's not even working full time. And I realize this is interesting. So pretty quickly, we meet with the owner. We hit it off really well. Then he and I meet in person. I'm digging through the financials, and I'm like, there's a real company here. This isn't just duct tape and baling wire.
Right.
We put together an offer. LOI is accepted in December. And then we had a target date, which was really, really aggressive, to get it closed in February. We thought we might. A couple things fell out. I screwed some things up, I'll be honest. And we ended up closing in mid-March. So bought Trinity Training and Development, and I'm rolling my sales training business into that over time. And here we are. I mean, a lot of lessons, a lot of challenges, but I'm sort of breathing a sigh of relief. But now I explained it to somebody. It feels like, with everything that needs to happen, it's like I'm drowning and somebody handed me a baby,
Right.
And I'm like holding it up and trying not to drown. So that's where it is right now.
Yeah, you're accountable for everything. It all starts
And
and stops with you.
We got two businesses, two, different sets of people. I got to integrate the technology. So many things to do.
So, like, obviously, the purchase, finding the business, took longer than you'd expected.
Yes.
And in terms of, it sounds like when you were searching for the business, you were networking, doing through your personal network, through professional network, business brokers.
I was looking at boards. I at one point I had several interns looking at boards for me. There was a lot into the search, and I think if I'd had some big pile of cash where I could have just done this full time, I might have found something else. But then you run into these issues. Well, is the bank going to finance it? And then you got to play this bank game. Which bank's going to get on board? So I took a couple deals to a couple banks, and they said, well, you don't have 5 years experience in this industry. We're not going to back you. And you find another bank, and another bank says, hey, look, if it's even just like a reasonable management experience, we're going to accept it. Mm-hmm. So there was this game of finding enough deals, finding the right deals, and then finding the bank financing that would work with that deal and with me.
So, I mean, it sounds like it was much more to it, much more complex than you originally.
And what's frustrating is, for people who have this desire to go buy businesses, these are skills that, unless you're buying businesses all the time, that you kind of use, and then you might not ever use again, right? It's not like selling or marketing or the operations. I mean, it's like you do this stuff and then you're done.
And so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, in terms of, this is a unique skill set that you need to bring specific players. So who was on your team
Yeah.
to buy this business?
So I had an attorney, Craig Bryan. He's here in Austin. Craig was great. I think we worked with you, helped a ton on some of the insurance and thinking through some things. Used Live Oak Bank. Paul Marino was great. They moved so fast. They were so easy to work with. And there was a team of guys called Rhapsody. One of the guys is in Dallas, the other guy's in Arkansas. What they were able to do was look around corners and say, all right, here's what's going to happen next in this process. Here's what's going to happen with the banks. Here's what's going to happen with the SBA. Here's what's going to happen that we need to be ready for with their attorneys. And where this team, a guy, Patrick Thornton in particular, really helped was I would be in a situation where I needed to negotiate with the other side's attorney. And you've worked all day. You're tired. It's a Thursday night at 7:30 and you're on a call with some third-party CPA doing a quality of earnings report, the attorneys from both sides, and you get really emotional because you're just trying to get this thing done and you're frustrated. And what this part of my team did really well, Patrick, is he could run interference and he could just have the conversation with no emotional involvement, which was really hard for me. And it's one of the things we work with companies on, understanding emotional involvement when people sell. Because if you're talking to yourself, you can't be in the conversation.
Right.
So he was an absolute key success factor for me. There was another group we used who helped do like a Q of E light for us. And that was really important. But if someone's going to buy a company, you need really good accounting people, maybe forensic accounting. You need, depending on how you're going to structure the deal, you're going to need somebody with some of your skill sets. You're going to need people who understand the tax implications, because then you start doing asset allocation and how's this going to affect us from a tax standpoint. Mm-hmm. You need attorneys who understand the deal type and the deal size. The team side, I mean, there are a lot of players involved. Oh, we had Pat Richter from Rigby Slack helped with some of the employment agreements we put together as well.
Yes, I mean, there's so many layers.
I was writing so many checks. Yeah.
But
it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. I'd do it again.
At the time, it may have felt a little special.
You were just like, oh gosh.
It's like another one. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, now that you have the company, what's going on? What challenges are you facing?
So I've got my current business, which is a sales training company. So we've been doing work for a long time with a lot of companies here locally. So that business, we're growing. We're going to fold it inside of this. We're going to rebrand the Northwood Group as Trinity. We got to figure out how we're going to do that. But there's going to be a rebrand there, which isn't going to be hugely important. But even buying this new company where we service 80 to 100 companies around the country and around the world a year, it's going to take more of my time and attention, getting my hands around the marketing funnel, all the metrics, operationally how we work. We're integrating the technology from the two companies. We're taking over the accounting, meeting the customers, meeting all of the trainers, setting goals and plans, getting everybody on the same page, moving to a project management system. There's so much. And then starting to look at how are we going to launch new channels, right? Because we've got some customer sets that have come to us through non-traditional methods. Well, how do we go find more of those? And I'm onboarding a new person inside of the sales training company and getting her up to speed. So it's a lot. And I feel like my brain doesn't think deeply at all right now, but we're just trying to get it all going.
One thing at a time, one day at a time, right?
I've learned a lot from you. Yeah.
Well, appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
And so, you're the Northwood Group.
Yeah.
Provided sales training.
Yes.
And that, tell us a little bit more about that. And,
yeah.
and that's going to dovetail perfectly in building Trinity.
Yeah. So I came out of a world where training was done in open public classes, and we worked with, I think I did the math, over 9 years, I think we worked with 80 members of EO here in the Austin area. We worked with a lot of them. And some of those companies went on to have great success. I eventually left that company because I just needed to do my own thing. I'm not a great employee because I want to tell everybody how to do things, and I don't like being told what to do. But when I formed Northwood, it was sort of we're going to do some consulting, we'll do a little bit of coaching. I didn't even like doing the training because I thought, I just didn't look at it as the way I do now. But realized, well, it's a business. It works. We can make an impact. and we can affect more people. And it's just better economically to do training than to do some of the consulting or the one-on-one coaching. And we'll do some coaching, but we really wanted to focus on the training. And so over the last couple of years, we've been honing in our approach, how we do it, how we deliver it, improving that. And I'm really proud of the work we do. Sometimes, you wonder how we're doing, and then the chief sales officer of a $100 million company says, hey, we raised our average price last year 22% because of the work we've done, right?
That's got to feel gratifying.
It starts to add up, right?
Yes.
Like, hey. So when I go back to negotiate with them on the next year's training fees, I bring that up. But so we've started, we're moving toward a more open model because a lot of small businesses would come to us and they just didn't really fit. We didn't have a way to deliver for them. Mm-hmm. And like the work you and I did for the last couple of years, I've not had a way to work with somebody like that because it's like, hey, I do these private trainings. Here's the entry fee. Probably not going to be a fit for you.
Right.
So we're going to have a combination of public and private training, and we're going to continue to deliver better learning experiences from what I've learned doing this over 18 years, talking to other companies, working inside of companies. So really excited about that. And I think there's ways to, on the Trinity side, we'll start delivering training to some of those customers, sales training, not just management training, and moving some of the management training into some of our other customers on this side as well.
And yes, you mentioned like the management training you provide through Trinity. So what dive a little deeper into exactly what Trinity does.
Yeah. So there are a lot of companies out there, and we can think about a lot of technical companies, a lot of manufacturing, logistics, really operations heavy companies where you hire people to functionally do a physical job, right? That could be in an assembly line, that could be in a construction site. At a certain point, those people get promoted into leadership. But a lot of times there's been zero development of those individuals. How do we communicate? How do we work as a team? How do we understand our people? How do we set expectations? We're doing a workshop for a company in a couple of weeks, and great company, great name. They build really beautiful things. And they're saying, we need our managers to truly understand how to set expectations so that we get the performance we need. Not that the people that they've hired are incapable, but your manager has such a big impact.
Absolutely.
And what we do is it's called Frontline Leadership. That's the name of the program that we deliver. We work over 10 modules with emerging or existing leaders to become better leaders. And we've got trainers who've got a ton of experience. I think the average facilitator we've got's probably been doing training for 15 to 20 years. And most of them had some sort of leadership development role in a large company before that for 10 to 20 years.
That's great, because that way, these companies who really are more focused on their core deliverables, now they can tap into a really deep well of experience, training processes, and really elevate somebody, or at least elevate their management skills to a really high level quickly.
And here's the truth. When it comes to making an impact on the company, it's the managers. Right. We can talk all day about hiring great people, but the managers have to set the expectations. So even on our sales training side, when companies come to me and they ask for sales training, I say, I will sell it because I got kids to feed, mama needs new shoes. But at the end of the day, if you really want to make an impact, it all happens through your managers, because we can deliver the best training in the world. But if no one holds your people accountable, no one coaches them, no one develops them, no one challenges them, no one motivates them, it's not going to matter. So work with your managers first. And so for any company trying to make an impact, you got to look at your people. You got to look at the managers and leaders in the company.
Absolutely. I mean, that is so critical.
Yeah.
I mean, that can 10x with their work.
And anytime I've had an issue in my business, it's usually me. I didn't communicate something well. I didn't set the expectation. I didn't build the right process. I didn't hire the right people. It comes down to your managers.
And so it's like a 10-week training process.
It's not necessarily 10 weeks. What we do is some people do it live. And we'll do 1 to 2 days at a time, and we'll do a module. We'll do a half day of training. We'll do a module each for half a day. But we like to set breaks. The breaks can't be too long between trainings because we want them to actually go and apply some of the material. Sometimes we do it online. Often it's a combination of a little bit in person, a little bit online, and it's broken up. We try not to have it go more than a couple weeks or a few weeks between trainings, because you need to get a chance to put it to work, but you don't want the time between sessions to be so long that they forget and they don't even know what to do with it.
Absolutely. You want to keep some momentum.
Absolutely.
And then once they finish a training program, Do people come back for some kind of audit something?
So
or
one of the things we're looking at is how we build on follow-on trainings and sustainability practices as well as accountability. So we've got some ideas on that. That's what we're going to be looking at over the next 6 to 12 months, how we build that. Currently, right now, companies will come and they'll say, we got 20 people. And they'll run 20 through and they'll say, hey, we got 20 more. And they just kind of keep running them through. But we are looking at ways that we can support these companies to drive lasting change, because you go through it and it's like, well, how do I keep from forgetting this? How do I actually make this a long-term habit that starts to seep into the DNA of our company?
So Adam, both of these businesses are centered around training.
Yeah.
And so with sales training with Northwood Group and management development training with the Trinity.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about each. Tell us how you do it.
So one of the things we do on the management side is, the management and leadership side, is it has to be activity based. No one wants to show up and be a hostage in a room and be talked to for hours. They need opportunities to have discussion, because we know that the more people talk, the more they actually retain. And we give them a ton of activities and exercises to do that. Some of them seem silly at first, but as you go through them, what you're doing is you're facilitating a light bulb moment. So one of the things I've heard said in the world of training and development is more is caught than taught. So what we want to do is create these moments where people can figure it out on their own, because when they feel like it's their idea, where the light bulb goes off, they own it and they actually retain it. So that's one of the things we do on the management side. Now, it's similar on the sales training side, but what we do there is we actually move a lot into, we deliver a concept, but it's not theory. These are things that the team, we actually do this stuff on our own selling. We show them how to do it. We put them in role plays where they can actually use it. And then we are consistently ready to role play as the prospect or as the salesperson with our trainees at any moment. Because if we don't, they're not going to learn it, and they're not going to acquire it. So a lot of people can read a lot of books. People are asking me all the time about sales books, and there's a lot of great stuff out there, but can people actually do anything with it? Right? Has it actually be, you and I can read books about golf swing and how to work on our golf swing, how to, our short game, our long game. But unless we're actually going to go work on it and get feedback and develop the muscle memory and be able to use it when it counts, we're just reading and we feel good because we're consuming, but we're not actually mastering, which is, we're not great at in this country. A lot of we love to get new ideas and, get the hack of the day, but rarely do we want to go deep and be really, really, really good at something. But all the rewards are saved for the people who say, I'm going to be the best at this. I'm going to master having a conversation with a prospect. I'm going to master dealing with this type of pushback or resistance. I'm going to be great at selling to CFOs. And so we spend a lot of time getting people really comfortable having those conversations, and then being able to do it at the drop of a hat and putting them in situations where they have to role play it, see what they're doing wrong, and apply it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. That's where we see change.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is going out into the field.
Yeah.
Failing.
Yeah.
Right. Not getting the results you wanted.
Right.
Doing a debrief.
Yeah.
And then coming back and doing some more training on that specific.
Absolutely. And that's where the managers, the sales managers, are really important. Is you need somebody who's going to say, all right, if young Chris, before he started all these businesses, if young Chris were being coached, it's not enough just to say, hey, go make a bunch of calls. It's, hey, go make a call. Let's talk about what worked and what didn't. What will you do differently? Let's role play how that'll sound. That's how you actually get people better, right? And so the failure rate in this industry of sales is really, really high. Now, a lot of people will say, hey, my team haven't failed. Well, they just underachieve, right? And you kind of keep them around because you're worried how you're going to replace them, and maybe they're good enough. But people underachieve and they fail because they don't actually get developed. There are a handful of people who knock it out of the park, but they were going to knock it out of the park no matter what they did, right? They're self-starters, they're motivated, they're driven, they invest in themselves. Those people do fine, but the vast majority of people, most of us, I put myself in this camp, we need something to help us move along and get better.
And so do you have the sales managers go through the training with their
Yeah, they have to. And one of the things I've figured out, and we learned this from a client, one of the clients said, they kind of said, well, hey, I thought there would be this in the training. And I thought about it for a minute. And after I got over being frustrated that this person was asking me to do more work, I was like, okay, she's right. And I realized we actually need to give paint by number instruction to some of the managers on what to go work with their people on. And that was a miss on my part, but I'd never thought, wow, that's what I need. I need to tell them very explicitly, because we'd always said, all right, you've gone through this training, send me and your manager 2 lessons learned and how you're going to apply them. So when you write something down, you actually are more likely to retain it. And then if you say, here's what I'm going to do, and if you declare it publicly, you're significantly more likely to follow through. But I realized I need to tell the manager, all right, you've got 1,000 things going on. You're doing a ton, but you need to go work with Bobby over there this week, and you need to have him work on this skill intentionally with you in this format. So we've started rolling that out to managers so that they can actually help people get better and improve between trainings, because training is not going to solve everything. There has to be a total development program.
And the total development program probably helps a lot with getting everybody on the same page, speaking the same language, paying attention to the same metrics.
Yeah. So think about this. This is really common in the world of private equity. We get a single platform company. It could be software that, I don't know, inventory software. They are going to start bolting on other companies, right? That's one of the ways they grow. Well, this company does this company does this. We're going to put it under one umbrella and we're going to cross sell. But we have different teams. Well, each team has a different manager. Each manager has multiple reps. And when you ask each of them about their sales process, they might use the similar words, but how they define discovery, how they define qualified, how they define best case, commit, all those things, usually very different, right?
Sure.
It's kind of like, with our wives, if we talk about what fast looks like, if I think you and I think 5 minutes is 5 times 60 seconds. Wife hears 5 minutes, or wives hear 5 minutes, and they think 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and both teams have all their timeouts. So very often, very different definitions. And so sales organizations, this is one of their challenges, is everybody's speaking a different language. So now if you're in finance and you're looking at the forecast, it's really not what you think it is, because no one's speaking the same language. We're just rolling up some numbers and wondering why we keep missing our targets.
Yeah, different sales cycles, different pay cycles, et cetera. I mean, everything's going to roll up.
But just even the way we define what a qualified opportunity is, from person to person, manager to manager, team to team, very different definitions.
Yeah, that could be a huge difference, especially if they're rolling in different companies.
Yes, absolutely.
Trying to get them to coordinate and cross-sell.
One of the biggest things is you just got to get everybody speaking the same language and operating off a central process that this is our way. I realize you want to get creative and you read this book, but this is how we do it. This is our language, whether we're manufacturing or we're selling something.
And how long does it typically take, like on an example like that with a private equity company that has, 3, 4, 5 different companies they bring together?
Never as fast as they want, right? Because everything's, hey, should have been done last week. But if a company's really committed to making change and your manager's really bought in, and no one's going to like this, but the problem didn't get created overnight, it doesn't get solved overnight, you can get the process rolled out. That doesn't take a long time, weeks. Getting this baked in and becoming cultural is a 6 to 8 month process. I mean, you'll see a lot of wins early, but changing that culture, changing the thinking, the methodology, the language, and having it really bear fruit, if people want it to stick, it's 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So there's the initial training.
Yeah.
And during that 6 to 8 months, is that typically part
of
it?
That doesn't have to be me. That's just, if they're going to commit to it, that's how long it takes to get everybody bought in, because you're going to be hiring new people. You got to train them in this. You've got to make sure we're not changing the language. We've got to establish these activities, these set standards. Here's what this means. We've got to get whoever's managing rev ops or revenue operations or sales operations. We've got to get everybody doing this. So it just doesn't happen quick. We've worked in organizations and they're trying to get it done in 3 months, and you just don't see enough change, because you're going to have holdouts, people who resist any change. You're going to have people who try. They're hoping, if I put my head down and I don't make too much noise, this will pass over. It really takes 6 to 8 months for a company to say, we're going to make a change. This is the way we're going. I know you've been holding out for 4 months. It's time to get on board.
And how many companies do you find that still, have the philosophy that, there's good salespeople are born, not made, and we're going to go try and hire as many stars as we can.
Every generation has a set of rule of thumb beliefs that everybody just kind of parrots, but no one really tests, right? This is one of them. Like, well, we just got to go get a good hunter. And we've got a mutual friend, and he's like, I need a really good sales guy. I was like, hey, really good sales guy. He says, yeah. And I said, what's he going to do? He's like, well, he's just going to go bring in a lot of business. I said, okay. And what are you going to do? He's like, well, I got this other guy to kind of manage. I'm going to, I'll kind of help out, but, I'm kind of moving into retirement. I said, so let me ask you something. You're not going to do a lot. He's going to do he's going to bring in all the business that you need to grow. He's going to see that he's pretty good at this. Why is he going to stay? If you can find him, why is he going to stay with you? And he's like, oh, that's a good point. I said, the good people want good management. That doesn't mean micromanagement, but they like being challenged. They like growth opportunities. They want to collaborate. Not all of them, but there are a lot of people who believe good salespeople are born. I think people are born with a lot of the right traits and the right DNA. Best sales guy I know here in Austin, works for software companies, murdering it. He had all of the right material, but he still worked really hard to develop himself. And he would go into companies and he would outperform everybody within 6 months. And he would say, this is my craft. I work really hard to get good at it. He couldn't just do it out of the box. He worked on it, but he's tough. He can negotiate. He wins people over. He gets everybody on board. He is the best I've seen.
Absolutely. So, and to play along with the sports theme, right? You can have somebody that's a great athlete.
Yeah.
But if they don't develop the specific skill sets for whatever they do, whether it's batting, catching, passing, there's so much that goes into that they're going to have a ceiling that they're going to hit.
Well, and just think about, we go back to football, Tennessee fan, we've had a rough 15 years. Texas, about a decade in the wilderness. And they both had good recruiting classes in there. They both had talent that went to the NFL. But how was management developing that talent? Were we creating offensive and defensive lines that are NFL worthy? If not, you're not going to win a lot of games. So we can get talent, but you got to give them a system. You got to develop it. You got to shape it. You got to put everything around it. Otherwise, you can just kind of keep doing what you're doing and hope it works out, which it usually doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, look, what would be like an ideal customer for you? Like what type of business?
So for Trinity in the frontline leadership program, you think about a lot of companies who are promoting first-time managers, or they've got managers they're doing well, but they've never had any sort of professional development. Maybe they've never even had a mentor. And so now they're running into some frustrations with communicating with people, setting expectations. They can't get people on the same page. They don't know how to handle conflict. Those are companies that would be a great fit for us. They're usually 50 or 100 million or more, but we're starting to roll out programs where we can take the small individuals who are just saying, hey, look, I want to keep learning. I want to invest in myself. I want to develop my career. We're building some programs to serve those as well.
That's great. Are there any specific industries, or is it just across any?
We've done everything from government to white collar to manufacturing, but really, really heavy in things like oil and gas and energy, manufacturing, logistics. We do a lot of white collar work. We do some government work, but those larger companies where they have layers of management, right? That's typically where it is. But we're heavily concentrated in those areas.
That's great. And like. So, if you could just take us through sort of a brief case study,
sure,
with how you've helped a client, customer, and
you'd asked about a case study. We've worked with a company called Delta Faucet. They've been around 70 years, and they had gone to market looking for something to develop leaders. Two of their complaints were higher than expected turnover, and leaders were saying they didn't feel supported, right? And so, if your leaders are saying they're not feeling supported, eventually, they're going to start looking to leave, right? Mm-hmm. And so now you have a bigger problem. Not only are you losing frontline people, now you start losing some of the leaders who say, well, maybe I can go somewhere else. And the grass is always greener. So we worked with them to roll out our frontline leadership program. We did it 10 modules over 20 weeks with some biweekly support in there. And what we saw is that there was a little more alignment. So we had established practices across sites, across departments, and people began to communicate a little bit better. Believe it or not, in a professional training environment, 100% of the people who went through recommended the program. So I don't know what we did. Like we pinned their arms behind them, say, hey, this is great, but the material's really good. And so people were saying, hey, this is actually worth it. Because imagine you're in a manufacturing environment and you're going to get taken off the line to go learn. Yeah, you're starting to worry about productivity because you're not there doing your job. It's not like the work went away. So those were some of the areas that we worked to drive outcomes for them. And the leaders actually came back and said, hey, we feel significantly more important. And now we see that we actually have a culture of development. And one of the things people don't see, whether it's on the management side or on the sales side, is you don't hire people and think that they're as good as they're going to be. I see a lot of people make the mistake of, I'm going to hire this person. They're coming out of the box ready to go as a high performer. And it's not that they're not a high performer, but people actually need to get better. That's, you as an entrepreneur, any of us, the bet we make is that this person should be better for us in a year than they are today and in 2 years. But it doesn't happen by accident. There has to be some intentionality around developing those people, whether they sell or whether they lead and manage.
And how much of it in the training talks about developing culture, right? And educating them on.
We definitely have that. It's really woven through of here's some practices, because at the end of the day, culture is what you do, right? So we spend a lot of time on how you deliver feedback, how you communicate. On the sales side, we spend 70% of our time with managers talking to them about how to coach and develop people. It's, hey, here's how you coach. Here's what it looks like. It's not telling Chris what to do. It's not criticizing Chris. It's working with Chris to discover what he needs to do differently and modify what he's doing to get there. So everything is about culture, but culture isn't always ping pong tables, happy hours, and a keg in the fridge. A lot of times culture is like, what do we do and how do we get it done? How do we develop the people? That's heavily, heavily undervalued in a lot of organizations.
So it sounds like a lot of the training that they can learn, they could take those exact skills and that template and then just apply it to their employees to improve productivity.
Yeah. So
that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And look, and I got to tell you, on the sales side, a lot of times it's easier to measure outcomes if it's not just employee engagement, which is a big metric companies use. But on the sales side, it's easier for us to look at reduced sales cycle, higher close rates, average order size going up. And we're really proud of that. But over here on this side, we're really proud as well of how we're developing people and giving leaders the tool to better engage and connect with their people.
I mean, it sounds like between Northwood and Trinity, you can help them on one side bring in more business and then help them improve the culture, their managers, and
how they
drive
communicate,
productivity
how they
and
keep
operations.
people aligned. Absolutely.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
No, we really like working with folks. We've got great teams. We're really excited about what the future holds. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
That's great. And if anyone wanted to reach out to you, get in touch with you, what's the best way to contact you?
Still email. It's not carrier pigeon or those St. Bernards with the things under their neck. But, Adam at trinitytd.com, or they can reach me at adam at thenorthwoodgrp.com. So we do have a newsletter. Some people say it's okay. So we will put people on that if they want to hear my thoughts on sales management, leadership. So would love to share that with them. But email us and we're happy to have a conversation.
And we'll put this in the show notes as well, along with your website.
Oh, absolutely.
And by the way, Adam's newsletter is great. I read it consistently, religiously. He does a great job of weaving in some sports analogies in there to help bring it to life in current events. I'm looking forward to the next one because Adam is a big Tennessee Volunteers fan, and they've had a little turnover lately. And
it's painful. It's living in Texas. It's really painful when everybody talks about UT and it's not Knoxville. So
exactly.
But the reason I talk about sports is the only thing I know, right? So it's this. Other people have hobbies. I don't. So
sports is your hobbies. And
it is.
You helped coach some high school football as well.
Yeah.
So
it's fun.
It is a passion.
Absolutely.
Well, Adam, thank you so much.
Absolutely great to be with you.
Being on the inaugural show, really appreciate it, and I'm so excited to see you finally realizing your dream and your goal of owning your own business. And I know you're going to do really great things.
Well, you've been a big piece of that, and
I appreciate
everybody. You went above and beyond in this deal on the pieces you played, and you moved heaven and earth for me, and you've been big encouragement over the years. So just thank you, and proud to know you.
Me too. The same goes back to you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So that's the end of episode 1, and thank you for watching the show, and look forward to episode number 2.